What happens when billions of dollars, one of the greatest designers in Formula One history, and a father's dream to see his son become a world champion, all collide on the same grid? At the center of it all is Lawrence Stroll, a billionaire who transformed Aston Martin from a midfield struggler into one of the most ambitious projects in the sport. He brought Adrian Newey on board, secured a deal with Honda, and hired some of the brightest engineers in the paddock. On paper, this should be the foundation for championship glory. But there's one problem, a problem no amount of money can solve. Because while Aston Martin prepares to challenge the giants of Ferrari, Mercedes, and Red Bull in 2026, the question hanging over the entire project is brutally simple. Is Lance Stroll really good enough to lead them there? Lawrence Stroll's arrival in Formula One was never about business alone. It was about family. His investments were driven by one clear goal: to give his son a seat on the biggest stage in motorsport. He started by sponsoring Williams, paving Lance's way into F1 with financial backing that few young drivers could ever dream of. When that wasn't enough, he bought Force India outright, rebranded it, and eventually transformed it into Aston Martin. This wasn't just about owning a team. It was about building an empire around his son. The billionaire surrounded himself with talent. Adrian Newey, the genius behind multiple Red Bull titles, Andy Cowell, the engine mastermind for Mercedes' dominant era, and Enrico Cardile, a key figure from Ferrari. With Honda providing engines, Aston Martin's technical lineup suddenly looked like a super team. In theory, all the ingredients for success are there. But there's always been one catch: Lance Stroll's seat. And as the sport gears up for the seismic regulation changes of 2026, that catch has never been more obvious. The numbers tell a painful story. Lance Stroll hasn't outqualified Fernando Alonso for 27 consecutive weekends. 27. In Formula One, that kind of streak doesn't just raise eyebrows, it raises serious questions. Yes, Stroll has kept pace in points at times, tied with Alonso at 26 apiece this season. But qualifying reveals raw pace and instinct, and Stroll's deficit has become impossible to ignore. His emotional outbursts, like the infamous shove against his trainer in Qatar 2023, or the frustration boiling over in Barcelona 2025, only highlight the pressure he's under. And while points may not be handed out on Saturdays, starting near the back makes scoring them much harder. Common sense in F1 is clear. The better your starting spot, the greater your chance of finishing strong, which is why many in the paddock now wonder, if Stroll can't even start ahead of Alonso, how can he ever lead Aston Martin into the future? Aston Martin's biggest strength may also be its biggest weakness: nepotism. From day one, Lance's career has been protected by his father's empire. In Formula 3, Lawrence bought Prima, the most dominant junior team, and even paid for wind tunnel access from Williams to ensure his son had an edge. At Williams, financial backing guaranteed his debut, and with Aston Martin, his seat has always been secure, regardless of results. That safe bubble has given Stroll stability, but it's also shielded him from the harsh reality of competition. Former driver Ralf Schumacher put it bluntly: if Lawrence really wants to be world champion, he has to dismiss his son. It's a brutal assessment, but it captures the core dilemma. If Aston Martin wants to compete with Red Bull, Ferrari, and Mercedes, can they afford to keep treating one of their drivers as untouchable? Because perception matters, and right now, the perception is that Aston Martin is being held back by a billionaire's family dream. To counter these criticisms, Lawrence tried a different approach: surround Lance with greatness. First came Sebastian Vettel, a four-time world champion, brought in to mentor his son. Then came Fernando Alonso, one of the most experienced and cunning drivers the sport has ever seen. On paper, no young driver could ask for better teachers. The hope was simple: by pairing Lance with legends, some of that championship mentality would rub off. But there's a flaw in this strategy. You can buy engineers, facilities, and even mentors, but the one thing you cannot buy is raw talent. And that's the harsh reality Aston Martin faces. Despite the best schooling money can provide, Lance's failed chance has failed to Russ being able to sacrificing results this season to pour resources into the upcoming regulation change. CEO Andy Cowell has even admitted how painful it is for the staff. On Sunday night, we're not happy. On Monday morning, we're not happy. The team is betting everything on 2026. Their lead driver in waiting is already dismissing the very regulations they're building around. Even if Aston Martin produces a car capable of fighting for wins, there's no guarantee Lance will deliver. Fernando Alonso, now deep into his 40s, can't carry the team forever. So who steps up when Alonso steps down? If it's Lance, Aston risks wasting their golden opportunity. But if it's a new signing, whether a rising star, a seasoned veteran, or even someone struggling elsewhere like Yuki Tsunoda, the results might look very different. In other words, Aston Martin could have the car to fight for championships, but still fall short because of one weak link. And that link may not be the machinery, it may be the driver behind the wheel. Which is why insiders whisper that sooner or later, the Stroll bubble will have to burst. For Lawrence, this is more than business, it's personal. Without Lance, he never would have entered Formula One in the first place. His investments, his empire, even Aston Martin's existence in F1, it all started with one goal, to give his son a career. But now, that goal threatens to collide with reality. Every other top team on the grid, Ferrari, so we return to the question that haunts Aston Martin's future. Can Lawrence Stroll let go of his son's dream to achieve his own? Even with Adrian Newey building the cars, even with Honda powering the engines, one weak link could hold back everything. And that weak link may ironically be the very reason Aston Martin exists in Formula One, because talent can't be bought. And if Lance Stroll can't deliver when it matters most, no amount of money, mentorship, or engineering brilliance will change that. So what do you think? Should Lawrence pull the plug on Lance and put Aston Martin's future ahead of family? Or will the Stroll dynasty continue, no matter what it costs the team?